In this video we will understand Unit 2 Models of Stress. Here we cover models of stress such as fight or flight response, general adaptation syndrome, GAS, cognitive appraisal model, person-environment fit model, PA fit, psychodynamic theory, genetic constitutional theory and diathesis stress model. Let's start with introduction. 1. Importance of understanding a problem. When we want to help someone with a problem, whether it's a health issue like fever or a psychological issue like stress, the first crucial step is to fully grasp what's causing the problem. Just like we wouldn't give the same treatment for a fever caused by the flu as we would for one caused by malaria, we need to understand the root cause of stress before offering any solutions. 2. Example of fever. To illustrate this point, think about someone who has a fever. The reason behind the fever could be due to various factors. It might be a common flu, it could be malaria, or it could be another illness altogether. The specific cause of the fever will dictate the treatment plan that should be followed. 3. Applying the idea to stress. Similarly, when dealing with stress, it's not enough to recognize that someone is stressed. We need to dig deeper and understand the type of stress they are experiencing and what is causing it. This requires us to investigate and gather information about their stressor. 4. Previous unit on stress. In a previous unit, the concept of stress and its nature were discussed. This likely covered basic information about what stress is and how it affects individuals. Additionally, sources of stress and methods to measure stress levels were also explained. 5. The current unit's focus. In the current unit, the focus will shift towards delving deeper into the subject of stress by exploring various models of stress. These models will provide us with different perspectives and frameworks to better understand the concept of stress. By doing so, we can develop a more comprehensive understanding of stress and how it impacts individuals. In summary, the text emphasizes the importance of understanding the root causes and nature of a problem. Using the example of fever and stress, it highlights that to address stress effectively, it's necessary to explore different models of stress. Building upon the foundational knowledge presented in the previous unit, now we will understand models of stress. We start with fight or flight response. 1. Introduction to fight or flight response. Cannon initially described stress as the body's emergency response. He believed that stress originated from intense emotions related to dealing with challenges. Cannon introduced the concept of the fight or flight response in relation to stress. Stress, according to Cannon, results from external demands that disrupt an individual's natural equilibrium. 2. Body's natural defense mechanisms. Cannon also emphasized that the body has natural defense mechanisms to maintain its balance or homeostasis. These mechanisms help the body adapt to and cope with stressful situations. 3. Sympathetic nervous system activation. Cannon was interested in how the sympathetic nervous system, part of the nervous system responsible for the body's fight or flight response, gets activated during stress. When an individual faces a threatening situation, they can either prepare to confront the threat or run away from it. 4. Physiological changes during fight or flight. In response to a threat, the body undergoes certain physiological changes to prepare for action. These changes include sweating, a dry mouth, tense muscles, increased blood pressure, faster pulse rate, rapid breathing, and dilated pupils. The body reallocates energy from non-essential systems to those needed to respond to the threat. Both the sympathetic nervous system and the endocrine system are involved in this response. 5. Restoration of homeostasis. once the threat is over, and there are no more challenges. The body returns to its normal state. Homeostasis, the body's natural balance, is restored. 6. Advantages and disadvantages of fight or flight response. The fight or flight response is advantageous as it helps individuals respond quickly to threats. However, prolonged exposure to stress in this manner can have negative effects on a person's physical and emotional well-being. 7. Criticism of the fight or flight model. Some criticism exists regarding the fight or flight model. Individual differences can affect how people respond to threat situations, such as gender differences in blood pressure responses. Women, for example, may not always exhibit the fight or flight response but may instead display a tend and befriend response, seeking social support during stress. In summary, Cannon's concept of the fight or flight response explains how the body reacts to stress by preparing to confront or escape from threats. While this response is valuable in immediate danger, it can have detrimental effects if experienced chronically. Additionally, individual differences may influence how people respond to stress, including gender-specific responses. Let's understand next model, that is General Adaptation Syndrome. General Adaptation Syndrome, GAS, is a concept introduced by Hans Selye to describe how individuals respond to stressful situations. It consists of 3 stages. Stage 1, alarm reaction. This is the initial stage of GAS, often compared to the fight or flight response. The hypothalamus activates the autonomic nervous system and endocrine system. The adrenal glands release epinephrine and norepinephrine, triggering a counter-shock response. Adrenocortical enlargement leads to the release of adrenaline and increased respiration and cardiovascular activity. Cortisol, produced by the adrenal glands, boosts energy production. Energy is diverted from non-essential functions like digestion, the immune system, and reproduction to prepare the body for the stressful situation. Stage 2, resistance. In this stage, the body adapts to the stressor, and equilibrium is restored. The individual resists the specific stressor, but resistance to other stimuli may decrease. Physiological changes like increased pulse rate and blood pressure continue to help restore balance. Energy remains directed towards maintaining equilibrium. The duration of this stage depends on the nature, intensity, and individual's condition when exposed to the stressor. Stage 3, exhaustion. The final stage is exhaustion, marked by a collapse of adaptive mechanisms. Physiological resources are depleted due to prolonged stress, making the individual susceptible to illnesses and health issues. It's important to note that GAS primarily focuses on the physiological aspects of stress and does not address the psychological or cognitive reactions to stress. Additionally, later research suggested variations in hormone release based on the nature and intensity of emotions experienced during stress. The duration of exposure to stressor also plays a significant role. Acute stress occurs for a limited period, such as during an exam or interview. Triggers an allostatic response, causing temporary physiological changes like increased blood pressure and hormone release. Once the stressful situation ends, the body returns to its normal state. Chronic stress persists for an extended period, as in cases of living in a violent relationship or experiencing work overload. Leads to cumulative stress that can negatively impact the body's immune system, cardiovascular functioning, and overall health. The body maintains a prolonged state of equilibrium, which has detrimental effects on health. In summary, GAS provides a framework to understand how the body responds to stress through 3 stages: alarm reaction, resistance, and exhaustion. However, it does not consider psychological aspects. And later research revealed variations in physiological responses based on emotions, stressor nature, and duration. Chronic stress, in particular, can have severe health consequences. Let's understand next model, that is cognitive appraisal model. 1. Cognitive appraisal model. This model was developed by Lazarus and his colleagues. It explains stress as a result of the interaction between a person and their environment. Lazarus emphasized the importance of an individual's cognitive appraisal in determining whether a situation is stressful. Cognitive appraisal involves various mental processes like thinking, reasoning, decision-making, attention, perception, memory, problem-solving, and creativity. 2. Cognitive appraisal process. The cognitive appraisal model suggests that when a person encounters a stressful situation, they go through 2 stages of appraisal: primary appraisal and secondary appraisal. Primary appraisal evaluates how the stressor affects the person's physical and psychological well-being. Secondary appraisal assesses whether the individual has the necessary resources to cope with the stressor and prevent its harmful effects. 3. Primary appraisal. In this stage, individuals determine whether the stressor has a negative impact on their physical and psychological state. 4. Secondary appraisal. If the stressor is perceived as a threat, the individual proceeds to secondary appraisal. In this stage, the person evaluates whether they have sufficient resources, both internal and external, to effectively deal with the stressor. If they believe they have inadequate resources, they experience stress. 5. Stress and coping. When an individual experiences stress due to insufficient resources, they initiate coping strategies to manage the stress. Coping can involve various psychological and behavioral responses aimed at reducing the stress. 6. Reappraisal. After employing coping strategies, the individual may reevaluate the stressor. Reappraisal involves assessing whether the stressor is still perceived as a significant threat or if it has been effectively managed. 7. Outcome and reaction. The cognitive appraisal model suggests that an individual's reaction to stress, whether it's physiological, psychological, emotional, or behavioral, is influenced by both their primary and secondary appraisals. In summary, Lazarus's cognitive appraisal model explains that stress is a result of how individuals perceive and assess a situation. Considering both the initial impact of the stressor and their ability to cope with it. This model highlights the importance of individual differences in the cognitive appraisal process and the subsequent impact on stress reactions. Let's understand next model, that is person-environment fit model. The person-environment fit model, PA fit, introduced by French, Harrison, and Kaplan in 1982. Focuses on how the match or mismatch between an individual and their environment can impact stress levels. Here's a step-by-step explanation. 1. Model introduction. The person-environment fit model, PA fit, is a theory developed in 1982 by French, Harrison, and Kaplan, as cited by Ghosh in 2015. This model aims to understand how people's unique characteristics interact with their surroundings to influence their stress levels. 2. Individual differences. The model assumes that people have different needs and abilities. This means that each person is unique and has specific requirements and capabilities. 3. Stress and misfit. According to the model, stress occurs when there is a misfit or a mismatch between the demands of the environment and the resources or abilities that an individual possesses. 4. Positive example. If an employee is well prepared and confident about an important presentation they need to make in their organization, they will view this as an opportunity rather than a threat. In this case, there is a fit between their skills and the demands of the situation, leading to low or no significant stress. 5. Negative example. Conversely, if the demands of the environment, such as the complexity of the presentation or the expectations, are very high, and the employee believes they lack the necessary resources or abilities to handle the task, they will experience stress. In this scenario, there is a misfit between their capabilities and the demands, resulting in stress. In summary, the person-environment fit model, PA fit, suggests that stress is a consequence of the match or mismatch between an individual's unique qualities and the demands of their environment. When there is a fit, stress is minimized, but when there is a misfit, stress can be experienced due to the perceived inability to meet those demands. Let's understand psychodynamic theory. 1. Psychodynamic theory and stress. The psychodynamic theory, as described by Freud, helps us understand stress. Freud introduced two types of anxiety: signal anxiety and traumatic anxiety. Signal anxiety. This type of anxiety occurs when there is an external and objective danger present. And this danger is consistent with the relationship between the stressor, the thing causing stress, and the strain, the emotional reaction to stress. In simpler terms, signal anxiety is when you feel anxious because there's a real and apparent threat in your life. Traumatic anxiety. This is a type of anxiety that arises from within an individual and is connected to repressed sexual drives and aggressive instincts. Traumatic anxiety can lead to the development of psychological disorders. Even though the conflicting ideas causing this anxiety might be transformed into harmless thoughts, the energy produced by this internal conflict can manifest as physical symptoms in the individual's body. 2. Levinson's explanation of stress. Levinson, drawing on Freud's psychoanalytic theory, offers another perspective on stress. He suggests that two key elements of an individual's personality interact and give rise to stress. Ego ideal. This represents an individual's vision of their perfect self, their ideal self-image. Self-image. This is how an individual perceives themselves, either positively or negatively. Stress, according to Levinson, emerges when there is a gap or disparity between the ego ideal, the perfect self, and the self-image, how the individual actually sees themselves. In essence, stress occurs when a person's self-concept doesn't align with their ideal self. This approach highlights how unconscious personality factors play a role in generating stress in an individual. In summary, the psychodynamic theory, inspired by Freud's work, provides insights into stress by distinguishing between signal anxiety, external dangers, and traumatic anxiety, internal conflicts. Levinson builds on this by explaining how stress can result from the tension between an individual's ideal self and their self-perception. These theories shed light on the psychological underpinnings of stress and how it can manifest in different ways. Let's understand genetic constitutional theory. The genetic constitutional theory is a concept that primarily looks at how our bodies deal with stress by using our genetic makeup. The theory suggests that our ability to handle stress is influenced by both our genetics, genotype, and our physical traits, phenotype. In this theory, genotype refers to the genetic information that an individual inherits from their parents. Phenotype refers to the physical and observable characteristics of an individual, like their height, eye color, or other traits. The theory emphasizes that our genetic constitution, genotype, and our physical characteristics, phenotype, play a significant role in how we respond to and manage stress. Let's understand Diathesis stress model. 1. Diathesis stress model. This is a theory that helps us understand how people experience stress. It's different from the genetic constitutional theory, which mainly looks at how our genes, genetic makeup, can make us more susceptible to stress. 2. Focus on genetics and environment. The Diathesis stress model looks at two things: our genes and our environment. It says that both of these factors play a role in determining whether someone will feel stressed or not. So, it's not just about our genes, it's also about what's happening around us. 3. Genetics and environment work together. The theory also suggests that our genetics and our environment work together. They aren't separate. Instead, they influence each other when it comes to stress. 4. Example. To make it clearer, let's consider an example. Imagine someone has a genetic predisposition, a tendency that runs in their family, for breathing problems. According to the Diathesis stress model, even though they have this genetic tendency, they may only experience breathing problems when they're exposed to high levels of stress. If there's no stress in their life, they might not have any breathing problems, even though the potential for it is in their genes. So, in short, the Diathesis stress model says that both our genes and our environment work together to determine if and when we'll experience stress. And it uses an example of breathing problems to illustrate this idea. In this chapter we understood models of stress such as fight or flight response, general adaptation syndrome, GAS, cognitive appraisal model, person-environment fit model, PA fit, psychodynamic theory, genetic constitutional theory, and at last Diathesis stress model.